Hi there, I'm Stephanie Eckhart, Director of Career Development here at Homesale Realty, and today I'm going to show you an introductory video to the dotloop system that we use for storing files, for preparing documents, for sharing those documents with our customers and our clients, for e-signatures, for sharing them with the co-op agents so that they can also use them and work with them and send them back to us. It also has back-end capability for turning it in for processing in with the company. So full start to finish usage with our dotloop system. What you're looking at on your screen is the main dashboard page. It's the main loops. Everything that you have created is stored here, and you have the ability to search what you have on the front page for a specific address. You are able to filter out things you don't want to have to see or to be cluttering your front dashboard page. And you also have the ability to sort using various different sort options. What you're seeing here on the front page is the default grid view. So for each one of the transactions or files that I have created, this is what it's going to look like on the screen. And I have the ability to change that view to list view, which makes it a little bit more compact and gives me a little more detail. Or I can even make that more compact and it turns into more of a bulleted list style. I'll switch back to the grid view for the duration. Other things that you can do from this main loops page is to monitor the activity. So if I click activity log, it allows me to see all of the activity that has happened to basically everything that's on that front dashboard page. There's also an activity log per transaction or per file. If I click back out to my loops, there's also a section here for notifications. These are typically system generated notifications. So if I have assigned a person a certain role as a buyer or a seller or as an agent, and I'm adding documents to my loops, the system is going to let me know what types of things need to be signed by myself or by others, but it's also keeping track of other notifications like people who have modified things or those who have shared other things or those who have signed. So it's really monitoring and tracking a combination of activity items. And if I click back out to my loops again, we'll talk about some other things that you can do here. If I am working with a buyer and I'm getting ready to show them houses or have an initial consultation with them, and I just met them and I'm really starting the process of working with this person, the very first thing that I need to do from a dotloop perspective is come up here to the people section and add them as a contact or as a person to this system. Under the people section, I need to move over here to contacts. And then I'm going to click this add person button. Okay, when I do that, I am able to start typing in my person's full name and that person's email address. Okay. Now, what's important is that you need to select a role, and it's okay if we're suspecting that Mary at some point is also going to be a seller, or if I'm putting her in initially as a seller, that she's also going to be a buyer. We just need to have some role assigned to her so that the system knows that she has a specific identity or purpose for being in here, and then it will automatically pull all of her contact information and address information into the documents I'm going to be showing you later. Without the role, it doesn't pull everything over immediately. So now I can continue to add additional information here. Okay. In dotloop, the street number and the street name are separated. So you just need to be conscientious of the fact that the number goes there, the rest of the street name goes here. Okay, so if I'm just going to be adding some basic fictitious information here for my Mary Smith. And then when I hit add person, she is now part of the list of all of the different people that I have in here. So I'm going to hit save. And when I go back to people, if I was to go find her in my contacts, she should now show up. So there is Mary Smith. This system is also going to continuously add people to your contact list if you're putting them in later down the road where you're adding a listing agent to something, or you're adding a buyer agent to something, or additional people. It will keep track of those and save them as contact cards, but often without all of the necessary contact information that you need. So we're going to return to the main Loops dashboard. There's a icon right here that looks a little bit like a smiley face. We're going to click that. And the next step then in working with this new Mary Smith buyer is to come to hit this blue Add Loop button. So I want to do this early in the process. As soon as I'm meeting with somebody or getting ready to work with somebody, I need to create the file for them. So you really need to look at the system as if you were still doing paper files and you would be setting up a paper file for her. So initially, because I don't know what property she's going to be buying, I'm going to just create a file under her name. The system is really trying hard to find an actual listing to attach her to, things that are available for her to purchase or to potentially list. So it's also looking for Google Maps versions. But in this case, we don't know what she's ready to move forward with. So we're just using her name, and we will hit continue. The system allows you the opportunity to put in a photo, typically of the property itself. It's up to you if you'd like to use it. It's not required. In some offices, there is another middle step in here as well, basically asking you what type of transaction it's going to be. If it doesn't, we're going to be doing that manually in the next step. And then I'm going to hit done. So now you can see I've created a folder or a file for Mary Smith, and I'm going to hit the blue View Loop button so we can open it up and take a look inside. So this is inside our file for Mary Smith. The very first thing that you ever want to do once you're getting ready to work with somebody and you have created their file is to do those basic foundation pieces to set it all up. And it's really critical to do this. Ordinarily, it's only going to take a few seconds of your time to get that done. And it's going to save you a lot of extra time in filling forms out and having to retype a lot of things. So resist the urge to come down here and start filling this up with documents and start typing everything out yourself. Really take just a moment to set those foundational things in place. So we're going to select a transaction type. The system needs to know what this is. And typically we're working either with a purchase or a listing for sale. But there are other options as well. If you have a listing that you're leasing, if you're having somebody who's looking for a leased property to rent, and two other options as well. So in this case, we are going to assume that Mary is working towards a purchase. And as soon as I make that transaction type available, now I have another drop down asking me for what status we're currently in. So I'm going to select the loop status, and there's a bunch of options. Pre-offer typically is what we're going to be using way early on. As soon as I start working with her and I have to put in the consumer notice or the Maryland version, which is with whom the agent represents, and all the way up until we're actually under contract with the home. So typically we're starting with this and sticking with pre-offer for quite some time. Once we have gone under contract and she's found the house she likes and she's won the bid, then we're going to update our status to under contract. And it's important to note that this is a manual process because dotloop and Bright are not connected in that way to where if the Bright status gets updated, so too automatically would your dotloop. It's meant to be two different things. So this is really specific for dotloop's availability status for this particular person or for this particular property if it's a listing. And so on. If she withdraws the offer, we would move it to withdrawn. If we go to settlement and it's sold and it's finished, we move it into sold status and it stays there. Okay. A sold home is always a sold home. Same thing if it's terminated. So if we have to terminate for whatever reason, we're going to move it into terminated status and leave it sit there. And then we have archived. So it's important to note here that dotloop does not have a delete functionality, and it's supposed to be that way because this is an auditable system, and so it needs to be constantly recording and keeping everything that ever happens in it in case of an audit. So archived pretty much is used like delete. So we would never want to move a sold property into archived, for example. Archived would pretty much just be dead deals. The ones that we wrote on didn't get accepted, not going to happen. So that one gets archived and we start a brand new fresh loop for her next attempt at another home. Okay, so it's important that every single attempt on a property is one loop at a time and that we're not continuously reusing this loop. It's only called Mary Smith for the moment until we decide on a house we're going to try for. At that point, that one is finished and we would start a brand new loop for her if we were making a second attempt. So we're going to put this in pre-offer status. And the last step is to do the view details. When I click that open, it's going to ask me for as many details about this transaction as I currently know. And as those things change, I would need to keep coming back in here and making those adjustments so that it makes it easier to autofill the documents that are coming. So in this case, a good chunk of what we've already done is sitting there. The system knows that I am part of this because I created this particular loop, but it doesn't know in what capacity. So just underneath of my email address, you can see that it's marked as none, and that's referring to my role. It has no idea what my role is here, and so I need to tell the system so it knows where to place me for signatures and initials. In this case, I would be her buyer agent, her buying agent. Okay, I don't need to edit my contact information because you have an account set up already. I'll pop it open so you can see, but it does already include the company name and the street address for my office, etc. If yours does not include all of that, then you can go into your account settings and make sure it's all there. Now, you may have one admin, two admins, potentially even three admins. It just kind of depends on whether you're on a team or what the structure is like. So the admins are always there. They do have access to all of the loops. They're typically not going in and doing anything unless you're flagging them for assistance or to process things. So we're not going to mess with them and we don't need to add any additionals. But what we do need to add is our buyer. So I'm going to hit add person. And if I start typing in Mary Smith, it's going to be looking for the contact card that I've already created for her. So when I click it, thankfully, all of her contact information comes in. Had I not created the contact card at all, I would have to put manually type in all of Mary's information. And then if this didn't work out and I needed to write another loop and start all over again, I would have to do that process over. So having the contact card makes it easy to have her contact information just keep filing in. Couple of places here to note, there is a box here that says add to my team. You need to be very careful about that box. We never want to click that box unless we're expressly told to do so by someone, because what it does is it gives Mary the ability to act as if she is you in this loop. She can make changes to the documents. She can do whatever she wants in these loops, and it's not something that can be undone. So it's really reserved for very specific circumstances where you need somebody to have full access, full agent access to everything in this loop. We also want to stay away from this box here for send intro email. A lot of times we're creating these files on people really early in the process, and we don't want to send an email automatically very early like that, introducing dotloop and introducing ourselves and just kind of very presumptuous. So typically we would stay away from that also. Okay, so once I have her contact information, I'm going to hit add person, and now she is another person involved in this transaction. And we want to make sure we're staying on top of who all of the players are in a transaction. At this time, I don't have a property address that she's working towards or any other financial information about the transaction because I'm only just meeting her. So at this point, I'm going to hit save. And then there's a link right up here that says back to loop. So I'm going to exit the view details page, and I have finished setting up all the tiny little details that the system is going to need in order for me to work forward on writing an offer for her. Next up, every time you create a loop, a folder will appear. It's a blank, empty folder. It has these big blue boxes asking you where you want to get documents from to put into that folder. But before we start doing that, we need to make sure we identify what the folder is. And the reason for that is because you could potentially want to organize your loop to have multiple folders for multiple different things. Not only that, but if I'm doing a agency agreement with Mary or a consumer notice with Mary and she doesn't get this offer, then the next time I go to write an offer on another property for her, I want to be able to copy those documents into the new loop and not have to do them again. So when it asks you where you want the destination to be, you don't want a sea of folders to choose from. It would be easier for you if they all had names. So get in the habit of popping in quickly over here to the 3 dots, the little ellipses here on the folder. And using the rename feature, it's going to put your cursor right here in front of the word folder. So I can name this buyer offer folder and put her name in. And in order for it to stick, you need to hit the enter button or click off. Okay, so now I have that. And I could do multiple different things. I could also then later have an inspection folder or an appraisal folder and a title binder folder, whatever I would like. Now it's going to ask you, what documents do you want in this buyer offer folder and where are they coming from? So I have 3 options: templates, browse, and email. The templates have already been created for you by your office admin. So they have a packet of documents you'll need for a purchase, a packet of documents you'll need for a listing, as well as several other organized type packets. I'll show you that in just a second. You also have the ability to pull from your computer if you have saved something on your computer that needs to come in. And dotloop has amazing functionality for being emailable. So if I get something in an email that's a PDF that I need to get into my loop, I don't have to save it to my computer and take up all of that precious space and have to worry about finding it again later. What I can do is just forward the whole email that has the attachments I want right into this system, and it will pull those PDFs and save them. Not the email itself, but just the attachment PDFs. So we're going to start with the templates. I'm going to pull in and look from the left-hand side here. These are all the libraries. This is a scrollable section. Okay, so I'm scrolling down. I have a lot of options here. Just a quick note that there are lots of subcategories here, and you are also able to create your own personal library of documents if you want them. I usually use that for my quick go-to things that I use a lot or that I need to get to quickly. But there is a library called PA All Docs. There's also one called Maryland All Docs, and that's going to be every single document that you could possibly need to pull from will be there. So initially, when we're getting ready to set up our buyer documents, we don't want to go there because we're really typically using that when we're looking for one document that we need to add. You will have a preloaded buyer packet and a preloaded listing packet. Maryland has them also on a county by county library. For today's training, I'm going to focus on the PA buyer packet, but all of the same clicks and rules would apply. So if we do the PA buyer packet and I click on that, the right-hand side is going to populate with all the documents that are included in that packet. And you have the ability to go through and check off the ones that you want, but my recommendation is to use this link that says select all. That way you're not skipping anything, missing anything. You can see everything in the file itself and get rid of stuff you don't want. So I'll hit copy. Mine says 33, totally depends on what your admin has included into your packet. So don't get worried if your number is different. And I'll hit OK. And there you have it. Now you have all the documents that you need to write an offer. And you would just be able to go through one by clicking on the names of the documents separately, or you can choose to select a bunch of documents that you want to work through at the same time. And as soon as you start clicking documents, you'll see there's another menu that pops up here, allowing me to open all of them and work with them all at the same time, or to start sharing them once I have them completed. So in this case, I'm just going to demonstrate with the agreement of sale what would happen next. If I click it open to fill it out by some chance, it's going to pop up with an autofill option. And it already knows that my buyer is Mary Smith, and it already knows that I am the buying agent, but I would also be able to add additional people if I needed to. I'm actually going to switch back to something a little earlier in the process, so we're not messing with the agreement of sale right away. Let's do buyer agency. So as I said, it's going to pop up. It's going to ask you, do you want to autofill? And of course, that was the whole purpose of doing the view details. But if I need to make last minute changes or additions, I can do that here. And then at the bottom, hit autofill. And when I get down here to the contract, you can see all the highlighted areas is the information that was pulled over from the view details and that I don't have to retype. And then I can carry on and complete the rest of the contract. You can see here that the buyer initials are placed and it's a placeholder. And you can also see where you yourself need to sign an initial all the way through. I'm going to hit save and go back. If I was wanting Mary to sign these in person, if I was taking them with me on a showing, then all I would need to do is click on the consumer notice and the buyer agency, and I have the ability to download them or to print them. That way I have the paper versions and I can take them right with me to our showing. Now, if Mary makes a decision that she does actually want to write a contract on a property, then when I come back into her file, the very first thing that I want to do is go into the view details. Okay, I have to update this because I have new information now. We're going to scroll down to the property and add the property she's interested in writing on. And this is a really critical piece. I get options as I start typing this information. So we have Wayne Avenue. I want to make sure you guys can see what all the options are here. There are two that I can choose from. Okay, both of these are York. Both of these are listed by DRE's write-out. Okay, but the difference here is that this one says MLS and it says the source is Bright, and this one up here doesn't have that little MLS box and says the source is dotloop. It's really, really important that if a dotloop sourced option is available, that is the one that you click. Most agents really feel compelled to come and click this one because it looks so official and it has MLS on it and it says Bright. But that would be if we were working with an agent who does not also use the dotloop system. If you have two agents who are using the dotloop system, this is 100% the best option for you because it allows us to communicate and share things with one file rather than ending up with multiple files and having to pull documents from one and put them into the other, just in order for us to be able to e-signature with our clients. It makes a break in that communication that cannot then be restored. So you really want to be looking for a dotloop source. And don't worry, you don't see anything from the listing agent you're not supposed to see, and they don't see anything about your buyer that they're not supposed to see. It's only the things that you're sharing with each other that just makes it very easy to communicate back and forth, sharing that one system. So I'm going to click the dotloop source, and it's going to ask me if I want to import the listing details. Absolutely, this is not a scary thing. This is the stuff I'm supposed to know and have. So I will import the data. 27 fields then get updated, things like the whole listing address. It's also going to now include the listing agent themselves in here, so I don't have to add that person. And then the only other person I would need to add to this transaction is the seller or sellers themselves. And you should. Each record needs to be a singular record. So if there is a Jane and a John Doe that are selling the property, I need one record for Jane Doe and one record for John Doe. See if we can find one that doesn't have any information. So we won't have Jane's email address and we won't have Jane's phone number, and that's entirely okay. But I'm going to make this person the seller. And as soon as I do that, I now have the ability to plop in that person's street address and other information as well. Okay, the more I add in here, the more it's going to auto-populate into my documents. But keeping in mind, I won't have all the contact information for the seller, and that's okay. Okay, so now we have a seller, we have a listing agent, everybody who's a player is included here. If there was additional financial information I would want to have it auto-populate, I can add that as well. But I'm going to scroll back to the top and hit save. And the last thing that I need to do before I leave this screen is to change my loop name. It was Mary Smith because I didn't know what property she wanted to write an offer on, but now I do. And so now it's officially a transaction attempt. So I'm going to switch the loop name to use property address and hit save again, and you'll see it's going to convert now into that transaction. If I click back to loop, I would be continuing to go through all of the different documents that I would need for my offer, getting everything prepped and ready to go for Mary's signature. And if I wanted to send them to her for e-signing and e-signature, then I would select all the documents that she's supposed to have. And of course, that list would be much longer, but for the sake of just this training, we'll keep it short. So I would select those things, and then I would hit this share button. When I go to share, the system is going to try to be smart about who I'm trying to send it to. Okay, obviously, Mary Smith has not signed yet, and she's my buyer, so it's assuming that that's who I'm trying to send it to, and of course, that's 100% correct. It defaults to can sign capability because she hasn't signed yet, and it knows she needs to. However, I can override that and change that, so let's talk about the different permissions that Mary can have. With view only, she can only see it. It's not going to allow her to sign anything or do anything. It's really useful if you're trying to send it to Mary and you want to discuss the agreement of sale with her first before she does anything with it. Or when you're trying to send things to them after the fact. So let's say it's an executed agreement or some other document that you want her to have that doesn't need signature at all. The can sign obviously allows her to sign. That system does require that they have click a button that's flashing to start signing. And then as they're going through, the system is going to just keep jumping them to the next place that they need to initial or sign until they get to the bottom. And then they need to hit another button that says finish signing. If they don't do those things, it's not going to be a complete process. The other option is to can fill and sign. Not something I typically recommend until you're really comfortable using dotloop and really needs to be focused to one document at a time. If I send her all these documents with can fill and sign, she'll be able to override and change things in all of those documents, not just one of them. So you need to reserve that on a case-by-case basis. But typically as agents, we're preemptively filling things out on their behalf. So there really shouldn't be a reason for them to fill something out prior to signing, except for those rare occasions. And then the last option is can edit in private. This is what we're using when we're sending things back and forth to the co-op agent. We definitely want them to be able to edit in private. So if I send this offer to the listing agent and he wants to do a counter, this permission allows him to make changes on his own that don't affect my agreement of sale, get his person to sign those things, and then send it back to me where I would get another version of it. So it allows him to still use dotloop functionality and change things on my offer, but that it's not affecting my original. Okay, so we're going to leave it as can sign. There's also a place down here for entering a custom message. This is going to go to Mary as an email. So this custom message section is where you could put the body of the email, where I could type, hey, Mary, here's our offer. Please sign, whatever I need to do. Okay. There is functionality down at the bottom to attach the PDF to the email. So you can send this additionally with PDF attachments for each one of the documents in case she wants to open those or save those prior to signing. That would be fine too. And then if I hit the share button, which I'm not going to do because I used a fake email address, it will confirm the fact that I did in fact share this with Mary. Okay, it's also going to continue to update and show you the status of whether or not that person has signed. Right now it says not shared. It would tell you it was shared. It would say it was waiting for the other person, all kinds of functionality there. But I did want to make sure you guys could at least get your loops up and running right away, start using the system quickly to start writing offers and sharing things with other agents. A little bit of a process difference when it comes to listings. I started with the buyer side since it has a little bit of extra step in meeting with the buyer first before knowing what the address would be. But on a listing, that process gets skipped a little bit. You can come right into add loop. And since you know the property that you're going to be listing, you could just start right there with it and start typing it in. In this case, you're really looking strictly for the Google Maps version. Occasionally, when you go to list a property, you start typing it in and you will see other listings, maybe from before, things that might be expired and the agent never updated the status to archive it. in those instances, then we have all of these extra old listings sitting there. You do not want to connect to those. They're not yours, and it gets all complicated, and there's extra people in those loops, and you don't want to be bothered with that. So every listing is a fresh opportunity, and you'll use Google Maps. Same thing going through the process. I now have a loop that I have created for it that I can open it up. And then this time I would be adding in through templates the listing documents and doing the same process of setting up the foundation, doing my view details. The only difference is that we start directly with the transaction because we know what the property address is. Hopefully that helps you guys get started using dotloop quickly prior to having access to a dotloop training class itself. If you have any questions, as always, please reach out to your office manager or to one of the trainers, and we are happy to help you. Thanks so much for being with me here today, and we will see you next time.